Welcome to Into the End Zone. My name is Eric Hansen. He's Bob Morton. And if I didn't mispronounce the name of our show, I think he's going to be very happy with me. And we appreciate you guys joining us for our first live post-game show. We'll take your questions. So fill up the queue. I'll even give you instructions on how to do that. So, Bob, I'm going to let you start. Give me your overview and when you were able to push the beer away and say, okay, I don't need this anymore.
Yeah, I'll be honest. I think it was actually when I saw the last kick go through the uprights. You know what I mean? I just feel like I am notorious for never trusting a kicker when they're on the field, and so I just wanted to make sure that we got points on the board there, and we were able to do that. So I think we learned a lot about our team, in this game. I think our team learned a lot about our team in this game. And I think that we're going to be really happy with the progress we see over the next few weeks coming out of College Station tonight.
As you guys are joining us and we're starting to pile up the viewers here, go ahead and start filling up the queue. We're not going to get to the questions right away, but we will get to them shortly. So that'll give me time to go through and sift them out from you guys admiring Bob's green shirt. So let's start with the defense. Let's start with the Notre Dame defense. What stood out to you about the defense tonight? And was there anything unexpected for you?
What stood out to me, man, we have no problem putting those corners on islands, man. I'll tell you what, like we had no problem putting Christian Gray in like kind of his first island experience, early on. And A&M thought that, hey, we're staying away from Ben Morrison. We're going to keep going after 29. And I think you saw, Christian grow up over the course of 4 quarters to the point where there's nobody that I would rather have deflect that last pass on 4th and 2 to really give us the ball back at the end there. So that was shocking, even though I expected it. The one thing that was surprising to me, 2 things actually. One, from a schematic standpoint, in the 4th quarter, we started to see some zone blitz from Al Golden's defense. So instead of putting those guys man-to-man, the second A&M was counting on us to be in man-to-man and threw crossing routes at us, we were sitting there in zone coverage. And again, I'll mention 29, Christian Gray, just laying the wood and breaking up a pass because A&M couldn't adjust to us going with the zone blitz, which is not typical for us. And then the second thing I was shocked by is Xavier Watts better this year than he was last year? I feel like he had 7 interceptions last year, and 6 of them were thrown right into his breadbasket on overthrows across the middle. And to watch him undercut the receiver across the middle to just kind of take those cookies for himself, I'm just really excited what I saw on the back end.
Yeah, Bob, from somebody that's been in that stadium, because I know A&M recruited you, and somebody that's played in really loud environments, we talk about how difficult that is for the offense, and the defense did quiet them down a little bit, but how challenging was it for the defense to communicate and do the different things that they were doing?
Yeah, so I would say it's really not at all. I think what you're dealing with in a road environment for the defense is you're dealing with the noise of momentum. So when all of a sudden there starts to be an energy in the environment or a missed tackle and you feel the swell from the stands, there were a couple times I felt like we didn't finish our pursuit to the ball and we let a couple guys break one tackle, get a few extra yards. But ultimately the defense was golden, and I think we expect it to be that way on the road and at home all year.
What do you think the next step is for this defense? They're going to be playing Northern Illinois next week, who actually did score a bunch of points. But, the competition isn't – they're not going to be playing nearly as good athletes. But what's the next step for this defense? What would you like to see them do better in the weeks ahead and that you think they will do better?
Yeah, they could stop jumping off sides and I'd be pretty happy about it. That'd be one thing I could say they could do a little bit better. But you know what? I will also say this defensive front is really beginning to be known as a constricting front. There's no just unbelievable speed rush off the outside, but they just 3-4 guys get into a quarterback's face, I expect to start to see some pressures, given our ability to slip into zone blitzes and whatnot, to really get Jalen Sneed through the line of scrimmage. He's so fast when he comes off the edge, and really start to find ways to get into the quarterback's face with 4 or 5 rushing. We just did a lot of great things. I would like to see us blitz more to stop the run rather than blitz 6 or 7 to try and get in a quarterback's face and leave ourselves vulnerable to better passing teams.
Okay, we're going to flip sides of the ball now. I wanted the audience to build up a little bit, and we got more and more people joining us. Thank you for filling up the question queue. Remember, we're going to do it in lightning round fashion, so don't ask Bob the meaning of life. We'll have a really good answer. We won't have time for it. But just maybe quicker questions. So let's go to the offensive line. This was the storyline of the game going in. I think it kind of played out that way. Your impressions of them in the first half and what they learned from the first half that helped them in the second half.
Yeah, so impressions. This was really the first time I've seen full game action. We all have of that left side with the early starts. Obviously, Emil Wagner, but we knew that earlier in camp we were expecting to see that. Let me just say, Emil Wagner had himself a really, really good game. He looked like a seasoned veteran on that side. He and Schrauf. I think there were a couple times they were a little weak on the backside of runs, but if that's the only critique I'm going to have as a lineman, that's a really good day for them. On the left side, it was really 2 styles of games from Pendleton at left guard and from Knapp at left tackle. Knapp had a really good day in pass protection. I think he got a little lucky at times. I mentioned to you during the game, Eric, he likes to lean with his hands and his upper body onto those rushing ends, and he leaves himself susceptible to a spin move. Well, the Texas A&M defensive ends were not quick on those spin moves, but there will be defensive lines preparing to hit him with that early. He needs to really set inside. He had a good day pass protection-wise, didn't have as great a day in run protection. The flip side of that, Sam Pendleton had an unbelievable day in run blocking. I told you, I think he scored that first touchdown where Jadarian Price went for 47 because he just caved in that lineman and linebacker. He struggled in pass protection. Couple of flat out blown missed assignments that really caught us at some tough times in the first and second half. So both of them have some really good things that showed why they were there, but they've also got to grow over the next few weeks to solidify this line.
Okay, now, again, small sample size, but also going against maybe the best defensive line Notre Dame will see this year. So given that, do you feel like there's enough material there? Do you think there's enough good coaching, cohesion, everything else for them not only to not be the thing that keeps Notre Dame out of the playoff, but eventually be an asset this year?
100%. Not only did we go against arguably the best defensive line we'll see all year, we went against the Mike Elko coach defense, right? If you looked at the creativity that A&M brought into the box, it was the fact that they looked like they were lining up with 6 in the box time and again, but they were bringing really creative and exotic run blitzes, accounting for every gap, but making it really hard for even seasoned offensive linemen to know who to block and make it hard for the quarterback to figure out the zone read. And so we are not going to face a team that has the capability of doing that from a coaching perspective, and they won't have the talent to handle it either. So I think that you are going to see them become a sweeter and sweeter spot on this team as the game goes on, especially when to really close this game out, we did, even with a new coach and a new offensive coordinator and new players, we went back to a little tried and true with 2 tight ends, and we just played some bully ball there at the end of the game.
I have to let the people that are watching know, Bob and I can't help ourselves. We talked during the game. We texted during the game and so forth. And one of the things we talked about was the running game. And Notre Dame ended up rushing for 5.8 yards per carry. They had some home runs in the second half. What I kind of said to you was I felt like Mike Denbrock was feeling out what Texas A&M did well, what they didn't do well, and then he was going to attack. That process took a little longer for me than I thought it would. I thought maybe second quarter. It felt like that started to happen in the third quarter. how would you grade Mike Denbrock's play calling today? And remember, he was your coach at one point.
Listen, well, Quote a Minute Morton's got something to say to good old Coach Denbrock. Honestly, I think it's obviously better than average, right? Like we saw some creativity in play calling, blocking schemes, and everything. And the one thing I said was I hope that we're jabbing throughout this game so that we can hit some haymakers late in the game, and that's what proved to happen. So we're going to go ahead and just say he can't go lower than a B. I'm going to give him a B+. I think it could have been a little bit better in some ways. I feel as though early in the game we were passing when the box was loaded, but we weren't passing in such a way to stretch the field at all. Riley Leonard goes to the Manning passing camp and wins the downfield accuracy award. And it feels like we never tried to hit anybody in stride longer than 15 yards. We were hitting comebacks to Bo Collins, who was unbelievable tonight, hitting short intermediate routes, but it just never felt like we could do anything to get the linebackers and the safeties to even worry about what's behind them. And so I know we were playing it safe in that kind of environment, but I do think you've got to find when we started to really run the ball, Jeremiah Love hit like 25 or 30 yards down the left sideline. I would have loved to have seen immediately coming back with a play action pass. Even if you throw it to 10 yards of space and nobody's there, just let them know that your quarterback actually can throw the ball. So I would have loved to have seen some more creative play calling. And I'm not a big fan of design quarterback runs. Riley Leonard's really good at it. I would love to see Riley be a 250 guy, 250 passing yards, 50 to 75 rushing yards. That changes based on opponent. Felt like we were really relying on him to be our primary running back early. And then when we needed him late, obviously we're going to let Riley do what Riley does.
Okay, so how would you grade Riley Leonard's performance, having just said that?
I would say I'm happy with it. I'm not ecstatic, right? So let's go ahead in that kind of B+ range as well. I don't know what was the play call and what was the read, but one of the things about having a mobile quarterback in is every time you're handing the ball off on the zone, you can read the defensive end. And I just don't feel like we ever took advantage when Texas A&M was crashing down and getting the running back from the backside. We also really poorly executed our RPO game. I marked down that we had run 4 or 5 true RPOs. One was batted down at the line. One was a penalty because he threw the ball late. One was just a blatant incompletion. It just didn't feel like what Riley Leonard brings to the game was executed super well. And some of that is just, I think, getting used to the new system, the new players, new communication, and a really loud atmosphere. I expect to see a really exciting offense that gets the ball around a lot. And while I appreciate that Riley was really safe with the ball, I would have loved to have seen us spread the ball around and be a little crisper in our execution.
Okay, this is the last one I'm going to ask you before we go on to questions. So again, fill up the queue. Try to make them questions that we can turn around really quick. But here's my question to you. In the third quarter, Marcus goes for it. 4th down deep in his own territory, goes for 4th down again near midfield. And I actually thought that was a first down. And I think the announcing team did too. I want you to answer this as a alum and as a player, how you would have reacted to those calls as a player. And then as you did with Heather wanting to keep the drywall intact on the walls.
Yeah. Listen, as a fan, as a former player, you can't go for that. You can't go for 4th and 1 when you just got stopped on 2nd and 1 and 3rd and 1. You can't do that. And then you can't do it at midfield as well. Like those calls in that kind of game, like, are just not calls that we want to live and die by. You know what I mean? Like, I know the Lions did it. They lived by the Dan Campbell and then they died by the Dan Campbell. I'd like to not be like by the seat of our pants in those moments. But as an offensive lineman, oh, you better believe I would have loved that call. You know what I mean? Like, hey, we haven't run Riley in between the tackles yet. Everything's been outside. So let's just go ahead and show him our version of a quarterback sneak and just bowl him over. And while I agree with you, I think he got the first down on the second one. Jeremiah Love may not be the running back you want to have in there on that 4th down. Maybe you get Jadarian Price in there, who's not afraid to bam in between the tackles a little more.
Okay, we've got questions. You've got questions, and we will have answers. And you guys are moving this so fast. I just saw them. And let's go there. Are you all surprised Indy never tested the long ball? Was that expected? A lot of short passes tonight. Does Riley have the arm to test defenses with the long ball? Bob?
Yeah, let's answer that in reverse. Doug, great question. I think that he does have the arm to beat a team long. I think that this offense has receivers that can go down the sideline, that can go across the middle. To me, the biggest improvement that this team has is just a full arsenal of weapons that can work together in complementary ways. I expected to see some more shots in that 12 to 17 yard intermediate range, at least, because he's got the poise in the pocket to do that. I think the reason why you didn't see that, especially early, was because in that kind of environment, if a tackle is slow off the ball and you need 3.5 seconds before you can let the ball go downfield, a lot can go wrong with a new offensive line. I think play calling early was done to protect those on the offensive line that didn't have the 6 starts total at the 2 tackles in the left guard spot. And then I think as the game wore on, it became more of, let's make sure we are doing what we do really well in protecting the ball, keeping it in the hands closest to the quarterback. And then the only exception is we're going to go ahead and really start trusting one of our receivers. And Bo Collins was that guy tonight.
Okay, we have, why didn't Evans play more? What took the tight ends out of the game? Let me answer the first part and let you grab the second part. You know, Evans had been doing a lot and didn't show any rust during practice. He was available tonight. I think they probably just held him back. I know Cooper Flanagan had a really good camp, and I think they're just bringing him along slowly. Remember, this is a quick turnaround for him. It's 10 months from the ACL. But Bob, what did you think about the tight ends, how they were used tonight? And do you think in some games we'll see more flexing of the tight ends and in other games we won't?
Yeah, I think that after tonight, you're going to start seeing a little more tight end. I do. I think that, you can come in and Coach Denbrock can come in and say, hey, we're not going to do as much 2 tight end, but I'll never forget the joy that I had as an offensive lineman playing with Anthony Fasano on the line and playing with either Marcus Freeman or John Carlson in motion, right? There's just something you can do with a block first but secure hands tight end and a really solid receiving tight end. And so as Mitchell Evans, I think, gets a little more accustomed into his post kind of injury and recovery body and trusts himself a little bit more, he's going to be that guy we expect him to be. And I think you'll see moments where, Eli Reardon is able to make some hay in the passing game, but he does a lot of the things that Evans does. And Cooper Flanagan looked phenomenal blocking. Again, that touchdown that Jeremiah Love had at the end of the game was all because Cooper Flanagan found a guy to block in the middle of a line, and he looked like he was a left tackle doing it. I mean, just a great job, and secure hands a couple other times when he wasn't getting called on holding in the first half. So Flanagan had a really good game. I think he's going to see his way on the field a little bit more creatively to block and give Riley Leonard some check down options there too.
Okay, this one from Rajon. Bob, was A&M doing something different to get Indy to jump so often?
Yeah, it feels like it should be a really simple thing to not jump at every clap. I mean, it's in Pop Warner football, you're teaching your guys, you go on the movement of the ball. But even in college football, you don't have a lot of teams that are clapping multiple times in order to draw people off. I don't know if it was an unwritten rule or I don't know if it was something that was just true in the past, but, you had to be really careful when you were clapping to get people to jump off sides because there was a chance that motion the quarterback was making was going to be marked as a false start. But I think it was just really early in the season, in the game, something we weren't prepared for. And if you look, all those moments, we were really trying to make a big play on defense to get the ball back. So I think they jumped 3 times, they got called for it, and then a couple other times you flinched. But the whole point is you want guys to be ready and raring to go, and that flinch is okay. As a matter of fact, it came back to bite A&M in the butt a little bit later when they were jumping, thinking that our guys were offsides. But if you noticed, some of our players were no longer exactly on the line of scrimmage. They were probably a half yard back. So if they flinched, they weren't coming into the neutral zone.
Okay, we have a question from Tony. Is there any nervousness that the wide receiver core still won't be utilized consistently enough to start other defenses to counter Denbrock?
No. Tony, I think that's a legitimate question because I feel like we've seen this play before, right? Like we've seen an offense who just doesn't look good and comfortable throwing the ball, doesn't look good throwing to wide receivers, and ends up just coming back and running the ball. That being said, I think there are a couple things you should take away from tonight. I think there's a very clear number one receiver on this team. Bo Collins is a dog. He is, what impressed me was the block he threw on the left side to spring Jeremiah Love in the first half, and to have a receiver who's arguably your number one throw that block is pretty impressive. And I think that, just as time goes on in different defenses that aren't coached by Mike Elko, we're not in College Station, you're going to start to see that intermediate game open up with, Great House, who looked good today, Faison, who had kind of short work, obviously, a little injury question about going in there. Jaden Thomas looked really good blocking as well as catching the ball for short action there. You've got a lot of options in that receiving room. And with Bo Collins coming out as a clear number one, I think it starts to let everyone know what they need to do to fit into this passing game. I expect it to be more explosive in just the next couple weeks.
Bob, I'm going to follow up on that question, and I'll ask you this. As a player, the media, we like to say, well, they're only using part of the playbook, and as the season goes on, they're adding more of the pages in it. Is that reality, both when you were playing in the Willingham regime and in the Charlie regime? Was the offense expanding as the season went on, as the quarterback and everybody else got more comfortable?
So yes and no. Was it expanding? Yes, but not because you were holding something back. That's kind of asinine to think of, that right. You'd hold something back, especially against one of your top teams you're facing in the year. It's more of a ball security issue, right? Like you don't want to take huge chances when you can play safe and work your way to a dominant win at the end like we did today. That's what I think you were seeing is we didn't want to make the first mistake. We wanted to make sure that we knew we were the better team. We just wanted to grind this one out, and that's what we did.
This one from Bob Alvey, still defending ND the same way, 8 or 9 in the box. Our downfield passing game needs to grow big time the next several weeks. Let me amend this question a little bit because we talked about this a little bit. What are the ways to unpack 8 or 9 in a box? What do you see this offense having the capability of doing in future weeks that we didn't see in spades tonight?
Yeah, so I think the number one thing that we're going to counter a lot of guys in the box with is by going empty. We went empty more than 10% of the time, and we were running and passing out of it. The fact that we have 5 receivers, including Jeremiah Love, out in the slot, we have some capability to run with the quarterback in that. Which puts pressure on a few guys in the box. So if we have a team that wants to load up, we're just going to spread them out, and it's going to be our 5 on their 5, and we're going to run Riley Leonard right at the middle. So if it comes to that, we can do it. The other thing I'll say, because, Bob, I agree with you, we have to get teams away from padding the box. Tonight in the third quarter, A&M had 6 in the box against our 6. And it was these unique blitzes they were bringing from the second level that we were not picking up. And so those exotic run blitzes really hurt us. And I don't think a lot of teams are going to be able to do that until later in the year. And I think that Coach Denbrock and a young offensive line will be able to secure those things. And we'll be able to run and throw against a pretty run-heavy box.
Another one from Tony. What happened on the drive for Texas A&M other than penalties that they started getting on a roll running the ball? Am I being too picky?
Momentum in a game is a funny thing, right? And they found that Moss, their running back number 8, was starting to kind of get through the line a little bit. They were running on some traditional passing downs, and they were kind of bullying us up front. Like the pressure that we were bringing was pretty expected. We weren't bringing exotic run blitzes. We weren't bringing a lot of guys into the box. We were really content all game to play this bend but don't break. And when you play that, in the first half, you give up 2 field goals. But at some point in the game, you bend and you bend and you bend, you get DPI in the end zone, and you're bending from the 1 yard line. You're going to give up that score. So it's a little bit of a you kind of answered your own question. With the penalties. But I just think it's the style of defense we'll play that if we're going to give up 13 points to the number 20 team in the country, we're going to take that.
Last question, and this one is from Bob Alvey, and I appreciate all the questions, the comments, and that you guys answered each other's questions. That made it easier on Bob. That means I'm going to not get hit with a rolling pin by somebody for having Bob on too long tonight. But this one from Bob Alvey, if Faison is out for a period of time, who replaces him as the second field receiver? I'll give my 2 cents worth and let Bob weigh in. Chris Mitchell is in the rotation at that field position. We saw him a little bit tonight. I would think KK Smith may move into the rotation. I don't think Notre Dame will try to move somebody from one of the other positions. I mean, you could play Greathouse outside. I think you saw tonight why they like him inside, why he's a difficult matchup sometimes. But that would be my thought, that KK Smith would probably be the number 2 field receiver with the need for Chris Mitchell to step up.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that, the expectation is for you want Chris Mitchell to be special, right? You want him to be one that can kind of pop the top off of defense, and you don't want to do that at the expense of Jordan Faison, right? But if he's going to miss time, this is an opportunity for Chris Mitchell to say, this is why you went and got me, and let's go ahead and make something special happen.
All right, that's going to do it for Into the End Zone tonight. We will have our post-game takeaways show way after all you have gone to sleep. So just check out YouTube in the morning, get your coffee, and see how much coffee I've had overnight while I'm writing my stories and stuff. Want to thank Bob Morton for joining us, Heather Morton for allowing Bob to join us. And we're going to do this after all the games in which Notre Dame is not playing at Notre Dame Stadium. So the 5 true road games and then the Shamrock Series game. I'm actually going to be on the road, so I'll be doing this from Purdue the next time we do it. But thanks, everybody, for showing up and making this a great success.
Good night and go Irish.